Welcome to Observations, an open conversation about women's health. This is a space where physicians, patients, and other experts can sit down and have honest, evidence-based dialogue that cuts through the media bias and brings clarity back to maternal care and how we can care for both patients, mother and preborn child. With each episode, we will have real stories, real science, but also real questions about women's health today. From clinical insights to lived experiences, to aligned perspectives, and yes, also respectful disagreements. This is our goal, to bridge the gap between physician and patient, to empower informed decision-making, and bring back and elevate compassionate, fact-driven care. Now, a quick note before we dive in. Not every guest on the podcast is going to represent the views or positions of AAPLOG, but we believe that having open and honest conversations are going to make us better. So, grab your coffee, settle in, and let's get into today's observation.
Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm your host for today, Dr. Christina Francis. Welcome back to Observations. I'm so excited to have our guest today with me. He is someone who took a simple, everyday ritual that I'm sure you love just as I do, your morning cup of coffee, and turned it into something so much bigger. Anton Kresik is with us today. He's the founder of 7 Weeks Coffee, which is a pro-life, mission-driven coffee company that was built on the idea that business can be a force for pro-life advocacy, as well as high-quality, ethical coffee. What started as a dream shortly after he got married quickly grew into a fast-scaling brand that donates an amazing 10% of every single sale to pregnancy resource centers across the country. But Anton's story isn't just about launching a company. It's about his convictions. After spending time in the political world, he realized that real impact didn't always come from policy, something we all know very well, but from people, from businesses, and from everyday decisions. So he set out to build something that would align with his values, even if it felt risky at the time. And that's one of the reasons, Anton, I'm so glad you're on here, because I think so many of our members know that it's risky to live out their pro-life convictions in their profession as well. In just a few years, that leap of faith that Anton took has translated into millions of dollars donated to the pro-life movement, all fueled by a clear mission, a strong community, and a willingness to start small and figure it out along the way. In today's conversation, we're not only going to talk about what makes 7 Weeks Coffee different from other coffee brands, but also AAPLOG's collaboration with 7 Weeks Coffee and our surprising similarities, I think. So let's jump right into it. Anton, thank you so much for being with us on Observations.
Thank you so much for having me on. Happy to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here. Well, so to start out, we always like to kind of get to know our guests a little bit. I gave just an really brief overview of what led you to launch 7 Weeks Coffee, but can you give us a little more information? Was having a coffee company something you ever envisioned doing? What was your original inspiration to do that?
You know, it's kind of funny how you look back and see how God's hand has led you throughout life. But in the moments of life, you don't actually know necessarily where He's leading you. But I didn't. Look, 5 years ago when I started this, if you were to tell me I would have a coffee company that was supporting over 1,500 pro-life organizations and we'd be selling millions of dollars of coffee a year, I would have not believed you. But the Lord has blessed us tremendously. But really how it all started was after I graduated college in 2019, I got my first opportunity to just see what the pro-life movement was all about. And that was because I got to visit a local pregnancy resource center. And so it was at this very critical point in my life where I was trying to just figure out what I wanted to do. And I can probably relate to a lot of young adults out there. You graduate college and you kind of feel like you're starting over again. And I was in that boat where I had a major I didn't like, and I had not much opportunity in front of me. And I took the summer after I graduated college just to intern at my church. And it was an amazing opportunity just to kind of be in ministry, but to really observe a couple of really cool things. And one of them was visiting a pregnancy care center because our church supported them. And I was always pro-life, right? You know, as a Christian, you grow up with like the understanding of what it means to be pro-life, intellectually, but I didn't actually understand what it meant in reality. And I got to see what a pregnancy center did at our local center back home in Ohio. And I was just so moved by what the work that they um, were doing. And I was just so taken aback of how little funding and support they got for the most critical mission, I would say, in the community, which is literally supporting um, moms who are facing an unplanned pregnancy and supporting their babies too. So that's what really sparked my heart for the pro-life movement. And that's what actually kind of led me to DC, where I wanted to get involved in government and politics and how we can advance, biblical values and the pro-life values through that, because the pro-life, community and the pro-life movement needs more and more support, obviously on a political level and, even at a financial level locally. And so that's kind of what led me into moving to DC and working in politics. But that was the first time I had an experience with the pro-life pregnancy care center. So well before I had the idea for 7 Weeks Coffee. So fast forward to the fall of 2021, when I had the idea, it was 2 weeks after I got married. I literally Googled pro-life coffee and nothing came up. It was definitely a God-inspired moment. And I said, I'm going to start this. I'm going to start a pro-life coffee company. And it tied back to that very first center that I visited years ago. And we gave our first check to them, actually. So it was really cool how that really became full circle. But it's not like I had a background in coffee, and I didn't work in the pro-life space directly. But I always had a heart for this. And now I'm blessed to do both, because I love coffee and I love working in the pro-life venture. So it's been a blessing.
Oh, that's so amazing. What was your major in undergrad? I'm curious.
I graduated in supply chain management.
Okay.
Something I just picked because they said it was a good degree, not because I had any passion for it or desire. I played competitive golf, actually. So my whole life really before my first job, was just playing competitive golf. I played high school and college and thought I was going to play professionally. And then I had actually an injury, and it kind of reset me. And I look back, it's funny how you look back on life and things that were so like devastating to you personally at the time. So for me, I had this back injury from golf, and I was playing in a lot of pain. It was very like testing to my faith. And
I'm sure.
I felt like my whole future got like wiped out. I was going to like move to Florida, try to play professional golf. I had like this whole plan set out, and I was just totally could not do that. But if that didn't happen, I would have never interned at my church. I would have never visited that pregnancy care center. I never would have moved to DC, and I never would have started 7 Weeks Coffee.
Yeah.
And so you kind of see how God is always working in the background, even when you don't see it in the moment.
Yeah.
But that injury was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow. Wow. That's so amazing. And even the major that you picked, as you said, you just picked it because people said, oh, this would be something good, good skill to have. And I'm sure that supply chain management, the knowledge that you got through that degree comes in very handy for all of the coffee shipping that you all do and all of the logistics of your business.
It totally does. It's funny. Logistics is my second most important thing I think I do at 7 Weeks Coffee, because so much of our business is logistics, right? We work with our importer to bring it here in the United States, and we ship, tens of thousands of orders every single month. So logistics is key to, keeping our company alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I love the name of your coffee company. And so for those people listening who don't know, why is it called 7 Weeks Coffee?
Yeah. So when I had the idea, it was really just an idea for a pro-life coffee company. I didn't have the name. And my wife, who I don't know if you know this, she is a nurse by trade. So she has that medical background, and she's been a nurse, and now she's a full-time mom, which is amazing. But she was a nurse at the time. And when I called her with the idea, I said, "Hey, I have this idea for a pro-life coffee company. What do you think?" And she said, "Well, what are you going to call it?" And I didn't know. And then she asked me, well, sometimes moms will say like "my little bean" is a term during pregnancy. And she then said, "So when is a baby the size of a coffee bean?" I look it up. At 7 weeks, a baby is the size of a coffee bean. It's the same time a heart beats detected on ultrasound. So that was our name, 7 Weeks Coffee. Donate 10% of every sale to support ultrasound services at pregnancy care centers, so moms can hear their child's heartbeat for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's how it all came together. And, the name has definitely been an amazing part of our brand, because it really just brings people in on the mission. People are always curious why the name, and then they hear it and they're so like inspired for it. And it also is like a really cool, I'm sure as you guys would know more than me that just the medical age of gestation is, it just really
Yeah.
kind of ties it into our mission, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, it's really neat. I always love it's funny that she said, a lot of times moms will say, "Oh, my little bean," because I always default to peanut. I always, there's your
Hmm.
little peanut, and
Hmm.
call baby little peanut throughout. So it's so true. And, I think a lot of women are familiar with comparing the size of their preborn child to various, pieces of food or fruit or whatever. And so it's just a perfect comparison to, and everybody, I think can picture in their mind the size typically of a coffee bean. And so
Hmm.
just knowing that at that early stage that baby has a beating heart, which is really, really cool.
Yeah,
So,
so true.
um, so you mentioned some of your, or that a lot of your job involves logistics, and part of that is importing coffee from where you all import. And I have to say, and Anton is not paying me to say this, I promise, but I am a 7-week subscriber. I get coffee mailed to my house every month, and my favorite is the Ethiopian pack because I've always loved
Awesome.
Ethiopian roast. And I spent a good deal of time in Eastern Africa living in Kenya. Kenya has great roasts as well. But about direct trade, you all talk about direct trade rather than fair trade. Can you explain the difference to us? Because honestly, I have no idea. Um, and why that matters, and what your practices are sort of on the front end of where you're getting this coffee from, and why that part is important to you.
Yeah, I mean, sourcing matters, and I love talking about this because people know us as like America's pro-life coffee company, but what they don't know, we're one of America's best specialty coffee companies in terms of
Mm,
how we source and quality and cleanliness of our coffee. So the first pillar of that is direct trade. What does that mean? It simply means every coffee we buy, we personally know the farmers and producers who grew it, harvested it, and processed it before it ships to us. What's that mean? It means complete traceability of our supply chain. It means that we're paying farmers directly, so they're actually benefiting. They're not getting paid through a middleman. Most coffee is sold and then resold to the United States through like a brokerage. So there's like this
oh,
middleman,
interesting.
which means you're
Yeah.
paying a middleman, but you don't know what that middleman's paying the farmers. So a lot of
Mm,
times undercut wages, poor farming quality and practices. By buying direct from farmers, through our importer, we're able to provide them with livable wages. We're improving their farming and agricultural processes through the time with, educational regenerative farming practices and things like that. And it benefits the consumer because you're going to get a product that we completely verify, literally down to the farm. And I've been to one of our farms in the Dominican Republic. It's amazing to see the impact they have. This farm
yeah.
employs, oh my gosh, I'm going to guess hundreds of people. They support the local school and fire department. It's really a huge part of the economy. And because of 7 weeks coffee, we're able to purchase a large quantity of that, which then extends to all these these farmers in a really beneficial way. So that's really what direct trade means. It means, and like unlike a lot of coffee companies, we know the farmers who grew our coffee, and we also make sure. So just on the quality side, it's like we make sure it's all farmed organically. So we have 2 USD organic USD organic coffee certified, but regardless, all our coffee is organically farmed, which means there's no pesticides used. So it's clean, it's healthy. Then we also do a third party lab test to make sure it's mold free, which is very common in cheap commercial grade coffees. Ours is
Mm,
not. So, as a doctor, I'm sure you'd be appreciative of that, of the health
yeah.
aspect. That
Yeah.
it's important
Absolutely.
we put in our bodies, right? And that it's
Yeah.
not just something to consume, but that ultimately it's good for us by having no pesticides and things of that. So that's a little bit about the direct trade, and we're really proud of that. A lot of people buy the coffee for the cause; they're coming back for the quality.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so amazing. And, having spent time, like I said, living in Kenya and seeing coffee farms there and tea farms, which is another big export from Kenya. I know firsthand the impact that those places of employment can have on the people that they employ, but also just knowing that the farmers that you work with are not being taken advantage of. As you said, they're being given fair wages,
Hmm.
and that you have that relationship with them, I think is really amazing. And something else that you said kind of stood out to me as well, and here's where I think we can touch on one of the first similarities between 7 weeks and AAPLOG is, I think we both believe that yes, being mission driven is super important. Obviously, protecting the lives of women and children is what is driving us as an organization. And I know what is driving you all as well and what you care about. But in doing that, we don't want to provide substandard care on our end. You don't want to
Yeah.
provide a substandard product, and
Yeah.
we want to show that, for us, we want to show that life affirming healthcare is actually, not only is it ethical, but it's actually the best kind of healthcare from an excellent standpoint that you could receive. And very cool that you guys are also making that a priority for you, that you want it, as you said, to be safe and clean coffee so that we can know, as we're as we're drinking the nectar of life, as I like to call it every morning, that we are putting something good and not harmful to us into our bodies. So I think that's really great that you
Yeah.
focus on
Yeah.
that.
We like to call it just like, what is biblical excellence, right? It's not just having a heart for something, right? It's not just being, completely aligned with the mission. So for us, it's not just slapping pro life on a bag of, you know, sub quality coffee. It's
Mhm.
doing something with excellence in product as well. And that's what it means. Like on a product level, we're going to beat our competition. And on a mission level, we're going to be far superior as well. So that's really excellence in mission, excellence in product is really important, which obviously you guys do as well. So we can definitely relate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, beyond your name, and the fact that, like I said, like you said, you're the only pro life coffee company out there. What does it look like for you all on a day to day basis, would you say, to be a pro life company? I know we've talked about a little bit, but feel free to expand on it, the work that you all are doing to help support pregnancy centers. But I think recently, or maybe not recently, but I think you're also maybe supporting some other pro life groups or organizations. So yeah, I just would love to hear more about what you all are doing, to help support various pro life groups, and even within your own company, what you do to really have a pro life ethic.
Well, it's a couple different veins. The core of our vein is to fund the pro life movement and primarily pregnancy care centers, and now we've expanded to other pro life groups like yourselves and what AAPLOG is doing. Some adoption and maternity homes as well have fallen into that.
Amazing.
Basically, pro life holistically organizations. We're there to support financially, like literally give them financial support. We do that through our partnership program. So at any given month, we are writing checks to 30, 40 different organizations, donating nearly now over $100,000 a month to these groups. And so we have a whole program where we, have to talk to them, onboard them, make sure that obviously pro-life aligns. So a lot of our work is just, making sure we're getting funds into the hands of the people that need it the most.
Yeah.
And so that's really important. So that's what we're doing as a team on the back end. And obviously all the customers that are, buying our coffee, they're fueling that. Literally, that's how we're giving back. So we're excited for that. And now as we grow that partnership, where we really see, our voice is becoming, more and more, influential, if you will, in a sense that we're able to have a audience that we can educate and share and also
Mm,
represent pregnancy care centers. Like we want to be an advocate for the life issue in general. We want to be educational on the life issue in general. So that's the content we're putting out through our social media or email, and also a resource to the pregnancy care centers. We have over almost 1,500 now that are partners. We have content and resources that go out to them. And so we want to equip them. And so the more we grow, and my vision for this is like, we want to be the organization that represents pregnancy care centers well at a national level. And we also want to be a resource to them, not just financially, but in other capacities as well. If that's educationally or materials, like for example, we partnered with AUL a couple weeks ago in flying
yeah.
literally dozens of pregnancy
Yeah.
care centers to Capitol Hill so they can meet with members of Congress, so they can like advocate for what they're doing, in a legal, and not in a legal capacity, but rather in a legislative capacity of like what
Yeah.
they need for support from lawmakers. So that's other things we get to do. So we want to support them from, not just what they're doing at the local centers, but also from educational and advocacy as well.
Amazing, amazing. Can you think of a story or two, maybe that you've heard back from one of these pregnancy centers, or that you've experienced yourself, of the impact that they've been able to have because of the support that you all have given them?
I mean, there's so
Bet you have a
many.
lot.
We have a lot. We do
Yeah.
this. We're in a releases. We've done this huge campaign where now we're getting photos of the babies that like we've helped save
Oh,
just through our support. We
yeah.
have dozens and dozens of these coming in, just sending us pictures or like sending us just thank you cards for the strollers we've been able to buy, or the, all the diapers we've been able to provide for the center for a year, or, thousands of dollars of, clothing, baby formula, things like that. So those are really the stories that just warm my heart. But you literally get inundated with thank you cards, and it's awesome just to kind of go through those and just see the real world impact we get to have. That there's a mom that's going to receive support because we're able to give to these local centers. And that's ultimately because customers have made the switch. So obviously we always give the thanks back to our customers because we couldn't do this without them. But it's really cool now to just see more of the testimonies coming in of that centers are just so grateful for our support, and we're grateful for the work they're doing. We are just grateful because to us, they're the hands and feet of the pro-life movement. They're on the front lines, and they just deserve endless support.
Absolutely. Well, and they're under attack more and more.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was just recently the case with involving the New Jersey Pregnancy Center First Choice, that's being targeted by the New Jersey government. And even the week that we're recording this, they're one of the largest pregnancy center networks in the country, Heartbeat International, is being targeted by the state of California over their provision of abortion pill reversal. So
Wow.
these centers are under attack. We have hundreds of pregnancy centers that are members of AAPLOG that we help support as well through more educational resources and through coming to their defense, in a legal sense, and to support them. And so I know so many of our members, I'm sure, have benefited from their partnerships with you with 7 weeks. And so wonderful, because most of them are not getting government funds. They're
Yeah.
really purely dependent on donations.
Donors.
And so, yeah, exactly. And so the work that you all are doing to help support them is so crucial. And I have to say too, at AppLog, we'll make sure we put this in the show notes. We have a special link that our members or anybody who's interested can use to buy 7 weeks coffee, and then we're able to get a percentage of that sale back to AppLog, which we're so thankful for. I just think it's really, really cool what you guys are doing to help support so many within this movement. Um, it's funny to look at how we're a medical association, you're a coffee company. I think on the surface it would look like, what sort of similarities could we have? But we both, I think your organization and ours, were both started to fill what was seen as a really significant gap. You looked and said,
Mhm.
is there any pro-life coffee company out there? And I know that these pregnancy centers have a gap that needs to be filled. So what can we do that fills that? We started to fill this gap that really started to grow and expand in the 70s with Roe v. Wade. But when we saw medical associations really moving in a more pro-abortion direction and seeing the need for a consistent pro-life voice within the medical profession. Um, you're a little bit more, maybe not in the big corporate world, but you're definitely in the business world.
Mhm.
What do you see in business? I mean, as you're interacting with other businesses and things like that, do you see an acceptance of this kind of model of what you're doing? Or do you see, I don't know, I just would be interested to hear, because certainly in medicine, we see medicine moving towards a very pro death direction, sort of following the culture.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious to see, what sort of the business world's reception of 7 weeks has been. And do you have you talked to people who are now thinking, oh, I'm going to start a pro-life company in this realm? Or yeah, I'm just curious to hear if you've had experiences like that.
Well, it's a good question because there's been more and more businesses I think now are, I don't know if we're the first, but we were on the pro life side, we were one of the first like major like pro life like brands.
Mhm.
And there's now other ones that have come along, which is amazing. Like we need to build more brands that are just clear on their values, because business, I'd like to say is business is not, bipartisan anymore. Businesses have a certain social agenda. They have a certain moral agenda. They have a certain political agenda. And every time we buy or support, these businesses, we're funding a certain worldview. And it's not that we can just, turn off our purchases immediately, but there needs to be other brands that help fill the void. That, as you said, that's what we're trying to do. And I would love to see more of them. And even on top of that, there are brands that need to be bold for what they're doing. Like us, we want to be explicitly pro life, but we need other Christians in business in general. And what I mean by that is when we think of the calling of serving, serving the Lord, what is his will for our lives? How can we like truly see our lives as ministry? We kind of think like nonprofit or work within the
Mm-hmm.
church. That is part of it. There's another part where that means going out and creating business for profit entities, taking into our skills into the marketplace and using those to make money so we can steward it for the Lord. Like the way I see it is like dollars are going to flow through the economy. Some business or some organization is going to profit from those dollars. That organization is going to be responsible for how they use those dollars and steward them. Wouldn't it be better if more Christians were involved in that process? Wouldn't it be better if more believers had a say in where revenues and dollars and profits went? Because as a business owner, you can do that. You can then use it for equipping and giving to great Christian ministries. Obviously, the pro-life one being the most important one to me. So I think that's something I think is really important, is that, business is a form of ministry. It's not just within the four walls of the church.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think I could imagine it would be the same way for a lot of business owners. A lot of physicians, we have a public directory on our website that our members can choose to be listed on, if they want to. And then that's, like I said, it's public, but it is the most visited part of our website by the general public
Mhm.
because so many women want a pro-life physician. And so
Wow.
they come on our website. But oftentimes, what we find is in states that are really hostile towards the pro-life position, such as California, Washington State, Oregon, New York, just to name a few, there will be very few physicians listed. And I understand people say, "Do you not have members in those states?" And I'll say, "No, we actually have a lot of members, but oftentimes they're somewhat fearful to list
Mhm.
publicly because of backlash that might happen,
Wow.
from their groups or whatever." But the other thing we try to tell them is, do you know how many people actively want to see a pro-life physician? So it actually would bring so many people to your practice because this is
Right.
what people want if you would list yourself publicly. I wonder if the same thing wouldn't happen with businesses. If there are Christian business owners or pro-life business owners who would be willing to say, okay, we're going to go out there publicly to say that this percentage of our sales, or we're going to just do something to support, pro-life pregnancy centers or pro-life groups, would be a boom to their business. Because I think there are a lot of people, myself included, out there who, if I'm going to buy something from a company, it's nice to know that's going to go to help something that I believe in. I don't know. Have
Totally.
you heard any sort of hesitancy on the part of other business owners
That's
to?
a good question. I would say I've talked to a variety of business owners, and I think it's just more important if we see business as a tool and understand like how we should have an impact. Some of it is being explicit, like you're saying, yes, but it's also about being like impactful in other ways. If that's like using your ability to hire and to mentor and to like pour into like your employees, like through your faith and through your values, like that's really important too. I think it's really important that we see that like there is a mission critical kingdom mindset in all aspects of our business. And I think that's what's missing. And to be honest, I think we just, going to my first point, I just think we need more believers in the marketplace. Like I think it's just lacking. Like we've kind of like left it to the secular, and that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree. What, as you've been building this very values driven business in, the current very partisan, very politically divided, very sort of culturally divided society that we live in, what are I wonder, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced, maybe, or maybe you've just seen that because you are standing for something so clearly, maybe that has paved the way for you. I'd just be interested to hear. Do you feel like, have there been some major challenges that you faced, or do you feel like maybe the fact that you guys are very clear about who you are and what you stand for maybe has made it a bit easier?
Yeah, definitely more of the second. For every like one negative or anti life people we're going to work with or something. There's like hundreds of people that support what we do. And that's been the biggest thing, is like, there's so many people eager and excited for what we're doing with our business. And I think that's what I've just been so overjoyed with. Like, we are getting, there's so much more support than there is hate. Like, there's obviously people that have emailed, and there's obviously people that like have said terrible, nasty things, or people that might not be able to work with us, which is fine. We want to find people that are mission aligned, that we can work with and trust and grow with, and especially on the business side. And then on the customer side, it's just so cool reading the reviews. And if you go on our website, you can just read customer reviews. People are so just excited for the product and what we stand for. And it definitely makes all the negative reviews just go out the window, because we know we are serving a really important purpose and just bringing people joy with something they love, which is their morning cup of coffee.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, on the joy that can be brought, I'm really excited. This episode is going to come out in July, which is a month that we are partnering with 7 Weeks as an organization. So definitely keep your eyes out for the different ways that partnership is manifesting. But I wanted to highlight a couple of things that we are doing with you all in the month of July. One thing I'm so excited about is our Fuel a Future Physician initiative that we're doing. So for those in the medical field, they will know that July 1st is a big day in medicine. It is the day that new residents start in their residency programs. And I can tell you from having done my medical training that, medical school is a lot. You feel like you're kind of drinking from a fire hose after drinking from a garden hose, maybe in undergrad. But then when you move to residency, it is, I don't even know what you could compare it to. Maybe like one of those, if you've ever been to one of those water parks that has the huge bucket that slowly fills up and then just dumps all over you. Maybe I could compare residency to that. So it's a lot, and you are working very long hours, 60 to 80-hour work weeks as a resident. And for many, that's the first time they've ever worked that long. And done, overnight shifts, things like that. So you get tired, is what I'm trying to say, as a resident. And even medical students are switching into their clinical rotations. And so 7 Weeks has been very generous in partnering with us, and we are going to be providing 7 Weeks coffee for our medical students and our residents to fuel them through this hard month of July. So I'm so excited about that. Our members are going to be donating. In fact, if you are listening to this and you're a member and you haven't donated to help support this initiative, please donate today so that we can provide even more coffee for the med students and residents. But Anton, is someone who loves coffee and knows how it can fuel your day, I'd love to just have you give some words of encouragement to our medical students and residents in this month that we're partnering for them, not only, from we're going to give you this fuel coffee standpoint, but also because they're in a situation where it might be kind of hard. They may feel like it's hard to speak up for their convictions and speak up for their patients and for their values. So what words of encouragement would you give them to help fuel them this month?
Well, first of all, I'm just so excited that we're going to be able to do this with you guys. It's so heartwarming to know our coffee is going to such an amazing use in supporting your residents and everyone that's partnered with you guys as they become doctors here. And it's just so important that their voices are they're outspoken, with their beliefs. What's really cool is, like, as a doctor, you have authority to speak to something, right? And like, maybe it's hard to speak. I'm just thinking from my wife, who was a nurse. Like, sometimes it's hard to speak in it from like peer to peer in a medical sense, because there's just, I don't know, rivalries or just contention, and maybe it's hard, but that's an important thing to speak up to. But as a doctor, man, the amount of impact you'll have to speaking to patients and people you encounter and people, your friends. And when you get to tell people you're a doctor and what you do is as an OBGYN, I just think that's going to be the biggest opportunity to really let your pro-life values be heard. Because you can talk from a medical standpoint, and, maybe what you've seen with, unplanned pregnancies, or what you've done with helping treat moms or babies in the womb, all of that, I think, will come into play. So, man, I think getting to that level of being a doctor, you have such an authority to speak on, almost much more than, I have. I don't have a credential, and that's a very powerful thing. Not that doesn't mean if you don't have a credential, you shouldn't speak up, but I think it's something that you have to realize that, like, that is a way to open a conversation because you have, you know, these credentials to let you, speak into something. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and it's, we, as you said, we have such, as physicians, I think sometimes we underestimate the power that our words have with our patients,
Yeah.
and the impact that we have on our patients, to be able to talk to them about the realities of what's going, in a good way, the realities of what's going on with them during their pregnancy, in particular if it's a woman with maybe an unplanned pregnancy, or who finds herself in a difficult situation. And as you said, we our pregnancy centers are on the front lines of helping women in that situation. The other thing that we're doing that I actually think could be a really great resource for pregnancy centers, but also for physicians, even for our residents who might be in the ER talking to a patient who's maybe 7 weeks along, who maybe is contemplating an abortion, or maybe she just is unsure what she's going to do. And she really needs to be able to connect with that baby that's growing inside of her. Is we're partnering on a video that is going to talk about what's happening with that baby at 7 weeks gestation. And so I'm really excited about that,
Yeah,
because
me too.
I think it'll make you all's name, and this baby being the size of a coffee bean, just really come to life for people, and understand that this is a full-fledged human being, human person that's in there, that's alive, that's growing, that has a beating heart, as you said. And I'm going to encourage maybe that some of our doctors think about having a coffee bean handy, a 7 weeks coffee bean, so that
Yeah.
they can even use that as a little visual aid tool to when they're talking to their patients. But we're so excited about this video. I think it's going to be really great.
Me too. I'm excited to work with you guys and this can be great because you guys know so much more than me. I know that the heart is beating and the size, but I can't wait to learn so much more what's happening at that, age mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's just so important that people have accurate information, and also, I'll just use this, as Anton talked about the importance of pregnancy centers, and how your life, Anton, was changed by just visiting a pregnancy center and seeing what your local pregnancy center was doing. And then you just, it sounds like, basically said, okay, I know I want to help in this space somehow. So how can I do that? And just made yourself available and thought of creative ways. So I'm going to use that too to encourage any physicians that are listening or watching this podcast to, if you have not visited your local pregnancy center, and most likely you've got a pregnancy center around you
Yes.
because they're all
Yes.
over the country. So most likely you have one around you. Please go visit your local pregnancy center, talk to them, see what they're doing, and see if there's any way that you as a physician can help. There's lots of ways. Of course, they need medical directors, but there's lots of other ways that physicians can partner with their local pregnancy centers to help support the important work that they're doing. Is there any other sort of parting words you would say as far as pregnancy centers go, to encourage people, whether they be physicians or just people, regular people in their local communities who maybe have never thought about their local pregnancy center? What would you encourage them to do,
I'll just say
Anton?
this: like your support, whether it's time, talent, it goes the farthest when it stays closest to your community. So you give locally, support locally, and that's what pregnancy centers are. They are a local resource. So I just encourage people to get involved, to volunteer, to support, to give. And obviously, if you drink 7 weeks coffee, it's another way you can just support these centers as well. But all we can do to pour into what's going on in your area is, I think, what we can do in terms of the impact we can have. So sometimes it's so disheartening to think of all the negative in the world, and even on the life issue, if the losses we may have, or if abortions are increasing in certain states. But regardless, there's going to be a mom facing unplanned pregnancy in your community, and what can you do to support her? And to me, that's just getting involved with your local center.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so, so important. You're right. When we think of it on a really large scale, sometimes it's overwhelming and feels like, what difference could we possibly make? But we all can make a difference in our own communities and our own spheres of influence. And I think a pregnancy center is such a great way to do that. And another great way that you can do it is by encouraging those in your sphere to look at 7 weeks coffee, especially if they are Well, I would say even if they're not coffee connoisseurs, if they're coffee snobs, they will love 7 weeks coffee. If they're not coffee snobs, they will also love 7 weeks coffee. So my church is now proudly serving 7 weeks
Oh,
at
that's
every
awesome.
Sunday service. So if people are listening to this, if you are serving coffee in your office, if you are serving coffee at your church, encourage people to look at 7 weeks. Anton, where can people go? I know we're going to put the AAPLOG link in the show notes of where they can go to order so that AAPLOG can get a
Yeah.
percentage back. But where can they give us 7 weeks website and where they can go to learn more about
Yeah.
7 weeks?
Definitely that link or just 7weekscoffee.com. Best way to find us.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, Anton, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much just to you and your entire team for partnering with us in July to fuel a future physician and to help people understand better what's going on at 7 weeks of pregnancy. And thank you for your voice in this movement and your support of our pregnancy centers as well.
Absolutely. It's our honor to support you guys.
Thanks so much. And thank you to everyone for joining us this week. We will see you back here next week on Observations.
We hope that you enjoyed today's episode of Observations and that it broadened your perspective on women's health and how we can care for both patients, mother, and preborn child. If you like this episode, make sure to give us a 5-star review where you can find your podcasts. Make sure that you like this on YouTube and subscribe to our channel for more episodes coming up. And if you have any suggestions on any topics that we should cover or guests that we should have on, make sure that you email us at media@applog.org. Again, thank you for joining us for today's observation, and we'll see you in our next episode.